couple of months ago, we demonstrated how I like to do the girdle and squirt.
I have just woken up here and I have seen probably the stupidest video I've ever seen. And I kind of still mean that respectfully because I don't think this guy is trying to do anything wrong. But the information he's given you guys is completely wrong. And the reason I care, they've got 445,000 subscribers on YouTube and 114,000 followers on Instagram, okay? And that's potentially a lot of damaged forest. Just gonna let you know. So I'm just gonna watch this video through here and I'll show you what I mean.
A lot of y'all know I'm from Missouri, but you may not know Missouri is known as the show me state. I like that. I like to think that we Missourians back up what we say. So that's what I'm gonna do today. And a couple of months ago, almost exactly slogans. 2 months ago, we demonstrated how I like to do the girdle and squirt. You can use hack and squirt this time of year when the leaves are fully formed, but back in March, there weren't any leaves out, and I wanted to terminate some of these trees as part.
So I'm just going to let you guys know that, and I've watched this before, it goes through it later, but hack and squirt, and what was the other one? Slice and girdle and squirt. Girdle and squirt. Basically, if you're putting poison in a tree, it doesn't really matter how you do it. I would almost argue that the hack and squirt is probably better because you're exposing more surface area to the cambium layer. When the leaves the trees kind of go into hibernation through winter, like once they drop their leaves and stuff down, then all the nutrients and stuff actually goes down to the roots. And in springtime, maybe you've seen that, like once the fluids start running again, that's when they start leaking if you cut them and stuff like that. But for this time, especially like, you know, when he's trying to do it in the middle of winter when there's no leaves on the trees, that won't make any difference if you cut it or slash it at all. It doesn't matter. And even when the leaves are on, I don't think it would make any difference. It's the herbicide that's really doing the main damage here. Like if you ring bark, this is what we call it, it will still probably kill a tree. The herbicide just speeds it up.
The TSI, timber stand improvement, I wanted to leave the best trees and take out the rest of the trees. And if there were two trees almost the same, but they were crowding the canopy, I would make a choice and take one of them out. The goal is to leave the best trees for wildlife. This is for wildlife, not commercial forestry.
Let's pause this and look at this for a second. Take out the best trees for wildlife. So I'm just going to let you guys know that the best thing for wildlife and forests is to leave it alone. The funkier trees are often the better ones for wildlife. They have holes in them for birds. They have bits of deadwood in the canopy for insects and stuff like that. And a deer, a bird, it doesn't matter. They don't care if a tree's straight or not, right? Like as the saying is, the more kind of tree you have, the more surface area you have for a habitat in that tree. So because I know what he's going to say in a second about commercial forestry. Let it play here.
But the same principles apply. Although in commercial forestry, hopefully you could do what's called a merchantable harvest. You would remove the lower quality trees as a thinning.
So commercial forestry is completely different. You are cutting out the bad trees to get the straighter trees because it's better for timber and milling. So commercial forestry and what you should be doing to your wildlife plot is completely different. It's not even the same thing. Like I was saying, wildlife doesn't care for trees straight. Trees have this magic ability to be able to regulate themselves properly, okay? And so yeah, you need to cut out some trees. I'm never going to say that. I'm an arborist of 16 years, fully qualified tutor in arboriculture, and I've cut out more trees than most people as well, okay? So definitely not against cutting down trees. There just needs to be reasons for it, and all this. Everything in this video is basically wrong. So I'm sure I grant, but I'm happy to talk to you about it too if you see this video. I just have this feeling that you're making a video for the sake of making a video here. So, yeah.
Get some revenue from that and allow the better trees to grow. Now, unfortunately, a lot...
Yeah, and it's because also, like, you're trying to get, for commercial forest, you're trying to get, like, a wide, girthy tree. And that's when you do need to reduce some of the trees there, because then they fill out that spot better.
Loggers do the opposite. They take the very best trees and leave the rest, and that's called high grading. We're doing the opposite here, but we're not doing that again for timber value. There's not much timber value in this old oak stand here. We're doing this to improve wildlife habitat. And you look around, it's mainly brown leaves on the ground. There's no brooding habitat, nesting habitat, fawning habitat.
just going to pause this here. It's after autumn. There are, of course, brown leaves on the tree. That's where the leaves came. They come from the tree in autumn or fall, you call it. They all fell on the ground. That's normal. You can't use that as a description to say that there's no feed here. It's also, you can see really early spring in this. So a lot of that feed he's talking about hasn't come through yet. You can even see little bits of grass coming up through the dead leaves and stuff. So
no food. This was just a closed canopy forest that for a couple of months out of the year may produce some acorns. We can make it produce more acorns.
So he's talking about nesting too. We'll just back up a little bit. Is that like, you know, I guess that's turkeys and stuff like that. But cutting these trees out is not going to improve the nesting, right? You need to plant other lower shrubs. Like a whole forest has a high canopy, a middle canopy, and lower canopy. In this particular forest, there's almost no lower canopy in there, which is where your turkeys and stuff are gonna nest, right?
By reducing the competition between trees and get food during the growing season. Those forbs growing up in here, it might produce 1,000 more or less pounds per acre. That's awesome. And get some cover in here.
So this is the part I really don't agree with. And I haven't read the study on it. He's claiming that there's some study done on it. But you're reducing trees of about the same size here in this forest, okay? So you have, just for argument's sake, 2 trees there. If you remove one, you're removing 50% of your canopy, okay? Which also removes 50% of your acorns. So to this like animation they have of the trees growing, these oak trees are going to take like 10, 15 years, probably a minimum of 10, more likely upwards to 15, 20 years to fill that canopy up, okay? So, and somewhere in here he talks about overcrowded canopy. That's not a thing. That's such an old, outdated term. Like, if you go into a virgin forest, go into like, even like, you say a thick one, like an Amazon jungle or something, and you look up, the trees live together like really well. Like they grow together and form a solid canopy on purpose because it locks in like its own little biome in there. It keeps moisture in, it keeps sunlight out, and it regulates, which means it regulates the temperature in there. This forest here is really bare already, and I mean, you can kind of see how dry it is compared to a lot of other like healthy forests.
Today is that show me, the follow-up. So
let me back up so you can hear what he says again here.
More or less pounds per acre. That's awesome. And get some cover in here.
And get some cover in here. You've just cut all your cover out, and now you're going to wait 10, 15, 20 years again for the cover to come back again. Makes no sense.
We did this pre-green up when it was colder, so we needed to use the girdle and squirt. And I took my Stihl chainsaw.
Stihl chainsaw. Do you think maybe they're getting some money from Stihl just to do a video here?
I just cut into the cambium layer, cut through the bark in what some people call the inner bark, kind of between this and the hardwood in the center. The center of a tree is dead. That's just, those cells are just there for structural support on a hardwood tree.
That's right.
The circulatory system, called the cambium, or you may recall the xylem and phloem, is right inside the bark.
Okay, it's not inside the bark. The bark's a protective layer. Like in that diagram we just went back to then. Let me go back to that. This one here. So this is the outside layer there, xylem and phloem. And I can't remember which one is closer, but phloem is the food one. Remember that, even though it started with a P, F for food, and the xylem is for the water. So the bark layer is separate to those.
Structural support on a hardwood tree. The circulatory system, called the cambium, or you may recall the xylem and phloem, is right inside the bark, and that's what transfers nutrients from the roots up or from the canopy down to the tree. It's the tree's circulatory system. And we take a chainsaw and cut through that. Now, if we stop there, there's all that energy in the roots, and this would just be a mess with...
Okay, so I know what he's going to say here. So he's kind of right, okay? But usually a bigger hardwood like that, once you cut it down at the ground, it doesn't generally sprout back. This is a different tree. I don't know what sort of tree that is. Maybe hazelwood
maybe
or
up to 100 or more stump sprouts coming out of the bottom of this tree, and to get thick and bushy. Be some okay quality food for the first year or two. Then it's 10 feet tall and super thick.
Those look like pin oaks, so that's definitely a possibility, those ones there. And pin oaks are quite vigorous growers, so I don't know what oak he's talking about. It's definitely a possibility. What he's saying is not incorrect. Poison's definitely going to help this sort of stuff come back, but you don't have to worry about it too much, depending on the species.
Never going to be a good tree, and no food, no cover, because it's going to shade out everything down here. So we girdle in, or we cut in through the cambium layer, but not too deep. Then we take a little squirt bottle, and we put some herbicide in here, about 1 milliliter or 2 for a tree this size, and that will terminate the tree, but it takes a while. And I walked in here to check on it today, and I was shocked that a lot of trees we treated have already been
terminated, poisoned. The poison is working. Please don't use silly terminology. It's the poisoning is taking effect, and
they're not greening up. They may get a little flush later on, but they're clearly not going to.
So the other thing about poisoning is it can actually take 2 to 3 years, even longer, for it to fully happen, because trees, like the way the xylem and the phloem works, it's segregated. So like, say you put poison just on one side of the tree, you're going to see, I mean, sometimes it twists a little bit, but let's make it simple. You're going to see that side of the tree die off. Like, same if you cut a root off on a tree, oftentimes you'll see one side of the tree die off. So if the poison's not as effective on one part of the tree, some of it will stay alive and a bit green as well. They definitely look sick and things like that, but it's not as easy as, hey presto, it's dead all the time, unless you use a lot of poison.
Make it. And the trees that I wanted to leave in the center of this group got a full canopy. And that will allow that tree to actually spread its canopy on out, even though it's a bit older, and produce more acorns. My good friend Craig Harper, Craig and I both went.
So again, like, you're reducing canopy to get canopy to spread back out. You're removing a tree that's producing acorns to try and get more acorns back 10, 15 years later. I really don't get this logic. It doesn't make any sense to me. You're already removing trees that are producing acorns, and you know, these are oldish trees already. Like, you can't it's not going to be an instant thing that you get more acorns. Even if what he's saying is true, I'm not actually gonna I don't have any background to say that there will be more or less acorns after what he's doing here. It just doesn't make any logical sense to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that tree that's next to it's going to produce 100,000, whatever, 1,000 acorns every year. You cut that out, and that other tree is going to take easily 10, 15 years before it's creating 1,000 acorns extra every year. And so over 10 years, you've lost, what's that, 10,000 acorns we're talking about, you know, and that's generous. So do you understand where the logic kind of fails on this?
At Clemson University at the same time, had the same major professor, Dr. David Gwynn. Craig learned through a bunch of his work after Clemson that the best way to get more acorn production is reduce competition. So I want to bring.
So let's look at this again. I mean, I think we showed this earlier too, but he's got a terminated tree, a poison tree. Let's call it what it is. Poison, poison, poison. 3 and 1 good tree. So he's even reducing more than 50% of the canopy in this particular area. So he's removing 3/4 of his acorn crop just in this little part here. Now again, he's trying to claim that he's only removing the bad looking trees and it's not for timber. But like, you don't need to remove these trees unless it's a danger to you. There's, like, you know, maybe a lot of big rot in something, the tree's half broken, the root plate's loose or something like that, you know, or you just have this feeling like maybe it's leaning over where your stand is, something like that, okay? Then take your tree out. But in the forest, just leave it. Wildlife likes funky trees. Even if a stem snaps out and lands on the ground and there's a half stem there, that is a great thing, because the top will start dying down, you get insects in there, and that's for the birds and stuff like that. Now let's keep going.
In your day, and we zoom up and look around, but the tops are dead or dying, no leaves or little shriveled up leaves. And
poison.
This is standing, but I can't push it over. It's dead. I won't be able to push this over for years. It's not dangerous. I'm not going to get hit in the head with a limb falling. I hear that, oh, I want to do that. It can't ever bow hunt in there. Can't walk in there. That's not the case at all.
So it is actually the case. As like what you're doing now let's make that clear. It's not needed. Okay. Secondly, you are now creating a problem for future generations, or another year and stuff like that. Now, I've watched this through. He goes through here in a second and talks about how he wouldn't mind getting hit in the head by a 2-inch piece of dried wood. Nobody wants to get hit in the head with a branch. And we'll keep going, because I'm going to tell you this, if you want to do what he's doing, and again, you shouldn't, there are different ways and better ways to do this. So let's get
maybe
to that
this
later.
fall or winter we get some snow or ice or something. Little limbs, how much snow or ice or wind we get, size of my finger less, start falling down. A couple years later, it decays a bit more.
Like normal, though.
By that time, it's air dried, and a limb, 2 inches around weighs nothing because it's air dried.
Do you want to get hit in the head in a limb? Sorry, you want to get hit in the head by a limb 2 inches in diameter from, what's that, 30 feet or something, more?
And they're just shed. Usually what happens, you get a big windstorm.
Which could happen in a forest already. Okay, I'm not going to say they can't.
A real heavy snow and ice storm.
And
several limbs will come down during that storm. It's not all at once. Several years from now, this tree will decompose enough that maybe you could push over, fall over. So, and then I get that comment, well, guys, you put poison in your woods. You put poison in your woods. I get that email all the time. I'm using a milliliter or 2. If I took a chainsaw and cut this tree down, maybe I cut it up and made firewood, I'm putting more toxins out there from the fuel I'm burning.
Okay, I'm going to stop him right there. So what he's saying is true, but really, again, he's not telling the truth. If you have a healthy forest, what does a forest do, ladies and gentlemen? It cleans the air, doesn't it? And it's in there for no time at all. It gets cleaned out by the trees, and then you don't have any poisons there. If you put poisons in your tree, it's in the tree and then in the ground for years to come. Okay, and do not believe anything that any herbicide or pesticide companies tell you. You think about through history how many we've had. They're like, this is completely safe, look, you can drink it, and then people get horrible cancers and stuff. Even the Roundups thing is glyphosate, whatever, the kind of salty ones, those are now not. I've used a lot of them too, but there's a lot of research come out and say they're not very good for you. They're not good for the grounds and stuff like that. These companies are in the business of selling you this stuff. They want to tell you that it's healthy and it's safe to use, and it's just not the case. So the other thing about this, maybe let me just play a little bit. I'll tell you what you should do in a second.
And I'm certainly not anti-petroleum fuels, but I'm very realistic. I'm putting a milliliter or 2 of a herbicide in a tree. One of these herbicides has the same toxicity to mammals or to humans as toothpaste.
Look what I just told you before. Don't listen to this stuff, okay? This is the same marketing that all herbicide pesticide companies have told you for ages. It's safe, it's safe, it's safe.
You shouldn't swallow toothpaste, you shouldn't swallow that herbicide. And that is less than you think about all the bar oil coming off your chainsaw if you run.
Bar oil, if you really care about it, you can get vegetable-based oils that work fine, okay? And it breaks down, it's just vegetable oil. So, this part is null and void too, if you really care about your forest like that.
On a chainsaw much, you know what I'm talking about. All the fuel. This is probably one of the best ways to do this. So, just super excited. We're going to do this whole wood lot. This is about 10 acres over time. And I wanted to show you.
Look at how barren that forest is there. There is no sublayer. No bottom layer. The top layer is already, I understand trees aren't quite fully in leaf here, but the tree, the canopy is not overcrowded. It's not overcrowded at all. There's it's very sparse, actually, I wish I could point to you on here, but it's very sparse as it is. It's very open. There's a lot of gaps in here. Yeah, so if you want to do this and you want to remove trees, do not poison them. Do not do what he's doing now, okay? The very best way to do it, but it requires that you need to be able to climb and some skill, is actually to go up and cut the tree off at about 10 or 12 foot and leave what we call a habitat pole, okay? And then the rest of the tree you want to cut up and stack at the base of the tree. So a forest, pretend we're not there as humans, all the resources gets recycled in it. This tree grows, I'm just saying, 100 years and then dies, okay? All the nutrients it took out of that area is in its tree still, right? And so it's very important that it rots back into the ground. All the insects get a turn on it, the birds get a turn on it. You know what I'm saying? It's a circle of life. So, everyone needs firewood. I'm not saying that. I'm just thinking about, leave some stacked up. You don't want your forest to be a mess. I understand that. Cut the tree down, stack it up into a nice habitat pile next to your habitat pole. Okay, like that. That pole is going to decompose down at 10 or 12 foot. There's no leverage on it. Okay, so what he was trying to say before about things rotting down, that is true, but there's absolutely no leverage on a tree that's that high, and so it'll rot down very, very safely. And the tree, you know, the birds and the bugs are going to love you for it. So this is just a video for the sake of doing a video, and it's really unnecessary, as detrimental to your forest health. Okay, let's keep going.
And zoom up and around, and you can see I've girdled a tree behind me. We're supposed to get behind me because there's a bigger tree.
Look how many trees is reduced, right? He's like reduced 75% of his acorn crop here at the moment just to save one tree.
Right back here, about 15 feet or so, that has a larger circumference, is straighter, and the crown or the canopy was slightly above the other trees. It's spread out more. Well, that tree can grow even more now.
So let me just start again, okay? The canopy is already out, this particular tree, the canopy is already out above the tops. It's not competing anymore. The ones underneath it is, the ones that he's cutting out are the ones that we're trying to get there. But here's the other thing about forests, okay, is that they all grow as a filter, right? So you have the top one that gets the first lot of light, and then all the rest of them grow to filter the light that comes through. Like, why does a branch die on a tree? It's usually the lower ones, right? And it's because it becomes inefficient. What do you want to call it? It's not viable for the tree anymore to put that much energy into that limb because it can't get the light. Okay, and that's why the bottom ones die off. So a tree will regulate itself if it doesn't have enough light. You understand what I'm saying? And the other thing too, right, is if you want straighter trees, which is what he's saying, is that's why you grow them closer together, because they grow up to try and get the light rather than out. So it's, you know, again, like a whole healthy forest regulates itself, and this is just a lot of weird stuff he's talking about.
Without competition, not just for sunshine, but water in the soil, nutrients in the soil.
Remember, we were talking about it before, okay? So the more trees you have in there too, the more nutrients is coming back into the tree, because it's dropping all the, look at the leaf litter there. If you remove all those trees, every year you don't get that dump of leaf litter back on there, which has removed nutrients from the tree. What do you say, water? Remember I was telling you about it. If you have more canopy in there, you get less sunlight on there, and it's better for the water retention in the soil as well.
And by taking these trees and terminating them, sun can come through, and now we can get grasses and forbs in here.
Yep. So again, if you want, like, if your goal is to get grasses or a food plot, then that's totally cool, man. That's not what he's saying on this, okay? He's talking about, you know, better trees for wildlife. I don't even know what he's talking about anymore. It doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, by all means, like, cut a section out, put a food plot in, put in grasses. That's totally fine, right? That I understand it's your woodlot. You're allowed to do what you wanted with it, but that's not what he's saying in this video. That's a byproduct.
And we will expedite the growth of that grasses and forbs, food and cover, by running a prescribed fire.
I don't know what forbs means, by the way.
Through here. I'm super excited about this. It's a really easy and safe technique. I actually used a steel battery-powered saw.
Ah, steel battery-powered saw. Some more product placement on there for the sake of doing a video.
Oh, it's light because you may, girdle a tree.
So what he's doing here is right, and I'm just being a dad here, is that you never want to use a chainsaw. You're not supposed to. It's in the code of practice. Use it above your shoulder height. So what he's doing here is fine, but as soon as you get over your shoulder height, that's when you start losing the control and the leverage in your arms to better control the saw better. And so if you get a kickback, which is quite likely, and especially if you don't see a stem around the other side, you're in a bit of trouble.
Set it down, put your herbicide in, or girdle 2 or 3. Right. You don't want to let that wound go for more than about 5 minutes, because the sap will start healing the wound. That's what tree sap, one of its purposes is to heal wounds, and herbicide won't get into the circulatory system.
That's true, but the thing is trees don't heal, they compartmentalize. So this is what I mean, is I don't really know how much this guy, he's a wildlife biologist, I think is what he said, and that is as broad a subject as you want it to be, right? So I specialize in trees. Trees do not heal, they compartmentalize, okay? So once a tree gets a wound, CODIT starts happening. Look it up, COIDIT, and basically it starts shutting the cell layers down and basically making like a shield or force field, not force field. But anyway, and so once the cells are cut and dead, they can't regenerate. All it does is compartmentalize it. So the cambium and stuff like that starts growing over the wound to seal the wound off, okay? But it can't ever heal back again. It doesn't work like that. Trees don't heal, they compartmentalize.
Works really good with two people. I was actually on the saw and Tim was using herbicide, and the two of us, we could walk right through the timber. It takes me more time to say, oh, I want to save that tree, I'll take that tree out. That takes more time for me than the process of cutting the trees. And because I'm only cutting it, a half-inch deep or so, that
look how open that forest is, ladies and gentlemen.
Battery-powered steel saw will last a long time because I'm just not working it that hard. So, want to give you an update on this. Follow through like a good Missourian. I told you, now I'm showing you, and I hope you can apply some of this information to where you hunt. Some people say, oh my gosh, that Grant Woods is such a heathen. He's talking about using a herbicide, and then he talks about creation. I'm going to take time today to explain that. Creation was perfect. Adam and Eve did what they were told not to do, and God told us creation fell. It's not perfect anymore, but we've learned and have the skills to restore native habitat. We're not going to get it back to creation level, but
this is stupid. Restoring doesn't mean cutting stuff out, Grant. I don't understand where you're coming from with this. And again, what is your goals? You're talking about having healthier trees and habitat. No, this is just completely the opposite. You're using poison in there, you're cutting things out, you're removing a lot of trees.
We can certainly improve it and go that direction. So yes, doing TSI and other things we do is a form of enjoying and restoring creation. Again, we're not God, we can't get it perfect, but we can improve it, and we can learn new techniques and ways and improve it more and more over time while we're getting some physical activity, some exercise, being outside, not on your phone, not from your computer.
Physical exercise.
It's a great way to enjoy creation, but more important than learning these techniques is seeking God's will and applying it to our lives.
So I just had to go and answer the front door, sorry. Before I continue too, I remember too that a healthy forest has regeneration layers in it, okay? Because the other thing he's doing here is potentially wrong, is that you think about a normal forest, you have young trees, medium trees, and old trees coming up. He's removing all the young and medium-sized trees by doing this. So at some stage, when that one tree that he's trying to protect or make better dies, it's going to be very much nothing there in there. But anyway, let's continue.
Thanks for watching Growing Deer.
Oh, he's basically finished. So yeah, let me just recap. If you care about your forest, do the minimal in there. Don't put poison in there. Don't listen to what he's saying. Don't listen to what the herbicide companies say. I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I grew up in this industry. I work with people that had cancers and things like that from sprays that they told us was safe, exactly like this. And the short and curly of it is you do not need the poison, so don't worry about it. If you need to remove trees, if you can, but you obviously need to climb it, please don't use ladders. Ladders are terrifyingly dangerous when you do trees like this too. Get an arborist in or something like that. Cut the pole, even 6 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot's the best, okay? Leave that as a habitat pole. The rest of the tree, cut into lengths and stack underneath where that tree was. Then all your nutrients goes back into the forest from that tree, goes back into the circle of life, okay? Like that, and bugs are gonna love you, birds are gonna love you. I don't know why he's removing these trees. In some of those, he's removing 75% of his acorn crop just to try and get more back in 10 to 15 years. It doesn't make any sense. Grant, I actually watch a lot of your stuff and I love watching it, but this time you got it horribly wrong, mate. I'm sorry. And to me, it just looks like you're trying to make a video for the sake of making a video for your still sponsor. But anyway, I'm happy to talk to you about it. It'd be great to have a respectful conversation about it. I hope I've been I'm quite a blunt person, but I still respect you, Grant, and thank you very much. I hope this makes a lot of sense to you.